Hello friends, and hello enemies. Welcome back to Weekly Allowance, where we review action figures. And today is no different. Today we are looking at Table Museum Michelangelo's David. So we've reviewed several figures in this line already. It's a pretty prolific line of action figures based on art pieces. So mostly statues and paintings from antiquity. We get a little bit more modern-ish with pieces like the Scream, not quite as ancient as David. But yeah, it's a really fun line, especially if you have an interest in the arts yourself. And I don't like to use this word often because it's overdone, as I've discussed before, but David is an iconic piece. So it'll be pretty cool to have a little version of him on the shelf. The cool thing about this is that it retains the look of the original fine art sculpture, but it's an action figure. You can pose it around, make it do all sorts of stuff. And yes, David is naked. He has always been naked, but this is artistic nudity, so I assume YouTube allows it. And if not, I guess we'll find out. Today's beverage is Jasmine Phoenix Tea, and I think we're ready to get started. I already kind of gave you a little look at the box. Pretty nondescript. Some Table Museum boxes tend to be a little bit more drab than others, just depending on the subject matter. David's a little bit monochrome, so he gets a little bit of a boring box. Lots of cool posing on the back, though. So I like to go in from the bottom. Well, that's what she said. I don't even know what that would mean. There are so many different types of these Table Museum figures. But the awesome thing is that they all look great together when you put them all together because they're all recognizable art pieces. So you can kind of see inside the box there's an insert and it's perforated. You can punch that out and have like a little base, and it's a really nice recreation of marble. So you can have a little base to put David on. I don't know how effective it is because it will just be like cardstock. So I'm sure it's fine at holding them up, but it might bow a little bit. I don't tend to use those inserts though. Typically these already come with a base. And if they don't, they're fine at holding themselves up. So let's get him out of there. It looks like he comes with more stuff than I thought he would. I kind of thought it would just be the base figure and a stand or whatever, but looks like he's got a sling, he's got an extra head. Here's the base. All right, we're going to put the extras off to the side for now and just look at the figure. Comes nicely wrapped in wax paper. It's on his back too, protecting his back from that secondary piece, the sling. To be honest, I forgot that David even has a sling. But that is his whole deal. That's right, I read the Bible. I actually might need to position him on this base piece because he doesn't really seem to want to stand up on his own. All right, so before I go over any articulation, what we typically do first is look at the sculpt and the paint. And another cool thing about these Table Museum figures is that they come right out of the box in the pose you'd expect. So this is how, more or less, David looks in the original sculpture. And the rest of the Table Museum figures will come out in whatever pose or stance that the original artwork has them in. Of course, makes it recognizable. And like I said before, you can move these around. I mean, that's the whole point. But I do like to keep them in the original pose. So it can be a little bit of a hassle to repose them correctly. Or maybe I'm just impatient. It's probably that last one. So this is a pretty good reproduction, though I am noticing things that differ from the original statue. Not surprising. The original statue is from the 1500s. It's enormous at 17 feet. It's made of marble. And it's not articulated. So you're talking some material difference and some obvious size difference. For instance, the statue of David is much more chiseled, much more muscular, or at least the muscles are much more defined than we're seeing here. And I can chalk that up to the articulation, which we haven't looked at yet, but you can see cuts where he's articulated. It just so happens that a lot of those cuts coincide with very detailed musculature in the original sculpture. So unfortunately, a lot of that was lost. Let's also talk about the color. This is a little more gray than I think it should be. I haven't seen David in person, but I've seen plenty of photos, and he's more white and glossy. Not super glossy, but definitely shinier than this pure matte they've got over the figure. This, I think, looks like how you'd imagine David in your head, not looking at a photo of him. But if you look at him, he does look different. I would have liked if he were more obviously marbly, like he had that wider color. He had some maybe minute variations to signify that it is marble. I mean, you can tell this is an approximation of marble, but it doesn't really look like marble. So yeah, not saying the sculpt is bad at all. It's really nice, but it does not hold a candle to the original. And I feel like that's a crazy thing to say because of course it doesn't. The original was made by Michelangelo, one of the most famous artists in the history of mankind. And let's get a better look at his face. Another thing is that it's just difficult to reproduce that amount of detail when you're working in this scale. I mean, 17 feet versus, what, 6 inches? You're naturally going to lose a lot of detail. He's not really holding on to his sling very well. So yeah, you do see some musculature. It's just definitely not as deep and exaggerated as the original. And I think even with these cuts, they could have pushed that anatomy a little bit more. The shading is very nice though. The hair is very nice. He's got a weird hair articulation here, which I don't understand, but maybe I will when we start to move him around a little bit. Maybe it's to help him look up. His base is very nice. I like that they really attempted to inset his leg against this tree here. And yeah, it just comes out of the box in that beautiful contrapposto pose. Another thing is that the joints are visibly a different color and different material. That's pretty much how it is with all the Table Museum figures, and I wouldn't say that it is a deal breaker for me, but it is extremely obvious, especially on this one. So if that's something that's going to bother you, it's really going to bother you. But let's look at articulation, shall we? Okay, I switched out his hands because I think the hand that is back holding the end of the sling is just attached to that forever. I tried to get it out. I don't think it comes out. But we do have a plethora of hands and we have a second sling, so that won't be a problem. Not a problem if it remains attached forever. All right, let's see the deal with this guy's hair. I am very curious. Yeah, I think it's just for looking up. He still doesn't really look up that much though. It's not bad, and you can get that much more up out of him with that hair joint, even if it does look awkward. Down, he's got a neck joint, and as we've said before, I love neck joints. You get a little bit of tilt, not much. I feel like it's resisting me, so I don't want to tilt it too much. I've never broken a Table Museum piece, and I don't intend to start now. These joints, in my experience, tend to be very smooth. Like, they're visible, but they're very easy to move. There's no crunchiness, there's no stickiness. Well, they can be frustrating at times just because of all the different pieces, but they're usually pretty fun to move around, especially the simpler ones. The articulation on these isn't very involved, but when you get something like this, you're not really looking for like something that can do crazy articulation. Something basic is enough, I think. More just a novelty that these move. Torso, crunch, some twist. Let's talk about this piece. It's very strange to me. It's in two obvious pieces. There's this middle section, and then there's this overlay that tapers down into a diaper shape, and that forms the entire crotch and butt piece. But why? I don't think that was needed. It's very odd. Like, why do you have that completely different piece there? And putting this obvious cut here, making these two different pieces, like I said before, gets rid of a lot of that musculature that makes David David. So I don't understand why they did that. There's no crunch or anything. The only torso articulation you're getting is up at the chest. Unless I'm completely missing something, which I don't think I am. Very strange. Don't know why that would be. Ooh, the legs, because of that diaper piece, don't really go out that far. And the butt's so juicy that his leg won't go backwards very far either. Like, not at all. Smooth joints though, very nice. It feels good. Up and down on that foot. You got rock on that foot. It's got a toe joint, and I'm not really a fan of toe joints usually, but these are pretty good. I think because they're so far down on the foot, it actually makes sense. It is very easy, especially on the arms, to get the joints out of place a little bit, and then you have to finagle them a little bit to get them back into place so you don't break them. It's usually pretty easy to find out when you've done that because you feel that resistance. Just don't push it, and I think you'll be fine. So he comes with, like I said, a good amount of extras. He's got that base, like I said, which is nice. Of course, that is part of the original sculpture, so makes sense. He's got a sling in motion, so this is meant to be a sling that's in action. It's being used. There's a rock inside. Nice sculpting on that rock, even though it's all one color. More or less, you can tell what it's supposed to be. As I touched on, David's whole thing is the sling. It's like one of the first One of the first Bible stories you learn about when you're a child. I wasn't really raised religious, but when I was a child, I did go to a before and after school program run by the YMCA. It was very, very heavy on the Christianity there. So I learned a lot about the various Bible stories. Sanitized for children, of course. So you get a special hand for that sling. Just fits in really nicely, just like that. You also get an extra peg for any of your peg needs, if any of them break or get lost. He'll come with a bunch of hands, and as always, I love when hands are on these little peg boards. Makes it very, very easy to keep track of them. I love that. I've got the splayed hands on him now. Looks like these are some relaxed hands, a thumbs up, or perhaps hitchhiking hands, and then holding things hands. Not only does he come with that base, but he comes with a stand in case you want to put him in a different pose. Pretty standard, but very useful. So the last thing accessories-wise we're going to look at is this extra head, which I was not expecting. It freaks me out a little bit. His eyes are bulging out of his head a bit, and it's distressing. And the reason for that is that you can move these eyes around. So here he is compared to the head sculpt that was on when we opened him up. This one is perpetually looking in another direction, so if you want to have him looking elsewhere, you've got this one. You should be able to take his face off. Oop, yeah, there we go. And you can see the eyeballs inside. The figure comes with this stylus type thing, and this is solely for moving the eyes around. The difference is a little minute, but I was able to get him looking off to the other side a little bit, but the tip on this isn't very strong. It's already begun to warp after just one time of moving his eyes. An eye moving gimmick isn't really something that I usually care for. It's not something I look for in my figures, but it is cool to have a separate head. I mean, if you want to have him looking somewhere else, it adds some personality. And it's always nice to get more bang for your buck for these figures, because some of them don't really come with much, but they still cost a good bit. There are a few that we've not gotten just because the cost is so high and it just doesn't seem worth it. The head is a little bit difficult to take off and put in. The neck wanted to go with it. And there we go. So here he is with that other head. Definitely looks more alive, looks more animated with this alternate head. Even though it does freak me out, because the eyes are bulgy. They're bulgy. And that's not the only bulgy thing about this figure. I think lately people have been really concerned about microplastics. But I don't think it's anything to worry about. So in the interest of science, let's give him his sling. I don't really know how a sling pose would work. I've never slung someone before. Like that? Something like that, right? Maybe the arm is too far back. So yeah, I did not know that it came with this alternate sling, and I think that's a really cool inclusion. You could even put David in some battle scenes if you wanted. He's a battle boy. So here he is with a few other of our table museum pieces, and it's just awesome to see them all together. These are just really cool recreations. They're educational, but also a lot of fun, and they scale really well with standard figures like Hasbro. This is just a really fun line. I adore every single thing we've gotten from this line. I do have some minor complaints, but overall nothing serious. I wish I could get every single table museum figure, but like I said, they can be pretty pricey, and some of them, I don't know if they're worth it. Just some seem to be pretty expensive for not much product, and I'm sure there's a reason, but I can't discern it. But yeah, highly recommend these figures, especially if you are into art or are an artist yourself. And despite my nitpicks about this, I do recommend this David. He's a lot of fun. And that's going to be about it for me today. I'm waiting on the new Mythic Legions Necronominus wave, and I'm hoping that's going to come in soon so I can start reviewing that. I'm super jealous of everyone who's gotten theirs already, because I really want to get my little raccoon hands on it. Really eager to get those and start reviewing. But as of right now, I still don't have them. We don't even have a shipping notification for them, and I want them in my hands. But anyway, until we get those, I'm sure I'll keep on finding other things to review. Thank you for tuning in. I hope this was, much like this figure, fun and educational. As always, likes and subscribes are very much appreciated. Comments are more than welcome, and I will see you guys on the next one.